Dementia Researcher with a blog and a rating.
As I write this, we're in the middle of the summer of sport, Wimbledon, the World Cup, and of course a myriad of other sporting events. I know absolutely nothing about football, other than that heading the ball is a bad idea and an offside rule is difficult to explain. I do, however, know quite a lot about some other sports, and I'm actually a qualified coach for one. If you had told teenage me that I would love sport one day, choose to do it regularly, and even train as a coach, I would have laughed in your face. I absolutely loathe school sport. I suspect, like many of you. Freezing cold hockey practice, the trauma of gymnastics, ugh. What did it for me was finding a sport that first and foremost was really social, helped me establish a friendship group at university, and then I got more and more involved. Oh, and not a ball in sight. Lovely. Last weekend, I went to watch the sporting event that is the pinnacle of my chosen sport and got thinking about what being involved in it had done for me, apart from giving me callouses and a dodgy shoulder. This was partly influenced by hearing about someone at the event who berated a coach for their child wasting a whole year of their life because they hadn't won their event. Is time invested in something really time wasted if you don't win? How do we measure success and what do we value? Personally, I think that there is much to learn from sport that is translatable into scientific careers. Race Against Dementia is a prominent example of bringing a sports mentality into science with a focus on teamwork, resilience, attention to detail, innovation and resilience. There is much to gain from applying sporting mentality, I believe, from any sport to science, starting, of course, with teamwork. The marginal gains now prominent in sport were popularised by a well-known Tour de France cycling team who paid attention to seemingly bizarre things like re-cleaning athletes' hotel rooms and providing their own yellow jerseys. This concept is now somewhat tarnished by subsequent scandals. One could gain a willingness to persist and persevere, or understanding that it takes time to reach goals. Perhaps being used to following training programs, usually written backwards from a chosen target event, feed into an instinctive understanding of Gantt charts. A familiarity with goal setting could also be useful. Speaking personally, I think that the translatable things that I gained from sport were what is now known as a growth mindset. Many hours of teamwork experience, an ability to set smart goals, plus the knowledge of how to work towards those goals, time management, and how to set tight work-life boundaries. The latter two were really important when I was training for a national level event whilst working full-time as a resident doctor. I didn't win, but I absolutely loved being part of it. Another way of looking at what sport has to offer science is to move away from arad pillars and to think about scientific projects using a race analogy. In my favourite sport, rowing, this is a 2,000 metre head-to-head grudge match, but feel free to insert your own sporting analogy of choice here. Even before the start of a race, crew selection has to have taken place, many hours of grueling training. Then the rowers have to get themselves and their equipment to the right place at the right time, usually involving heavy persuasion to someone to drive the trailer. Likewise, before the start of a scientific project, there is a long grant writing process. If successful, there is a lot of setting up to do. Ethics, recruitment sites, model selection, other regulatory permissions, and you need the right people to do the project with the right skills, or at least with a training plan of how to acquire those skills. Setting off from a landing stage to go up to the start, the rowers will be feeling a heady mix of excitement and fear. Actually sitting on the start line, however, these thoughts have to fade and be replaced by focus on getting the job done. At the start of a project, there will be a similar excitement about finally getting on with work that could have been in the making for many months, if not years. When the umpire drops their flag, the rowers start their start sequence. This well-choreographed series of short strokes then lengthens into longer strokes before entering the wind-up. At the end of the wind, the rowers will be going flat out, possibly rating as high as 50 strokes a minute. Similarly, there is a flurry of activity at the start of a project: meetings, paperwork, project sites, recruitment, and generally getting ducks in a row. At the end of the wind, the rowers then do a single stroke change called the stride. In one single stroke, there is a dramatic rhythm shift from a frenetic pace of the wind to a pace that the rowers can sustain for the rest of the race. This is equally true of scientific projects where the flurry of activity at the beginning is simply not sustainable, and you have to find a way of working that works for the whole team and gets the project done. This is where well-written Gantt charts and teamwork really come into their own. Hopefully at this stage of the race, your career is ahead. During the race, the rowers may need to do pushes if the opposition start trying to come back at them, or worse, overtake. A famous scientific example of this is the discovery of the structure of DNA, as described in the book The Double Helix. Don't get me started about the recognition of women in science at that time, though. Then, with about 200 metres to go, the rowers start thinking about the end of the race and going all out to push for the finish. This is, I think, probably more common in scientific projects than we would care to admit. Who amongst us has not had a tricky bit of analysis that they really have to push to finish, or a last few participants to recruit? This last push can make all the difference to a project. Scientists don't normally push themselves to the point of vomiting into a river at the end of a project, though, which is probably a good thing. Finally, there is a lovely tradition in rowing that the losers cheer the winners just after the finish. Being able to fail or lose gracefully is, in my view, just as important as winning. We will all have had grants that we really believed in that didn't get funded, or trials that just didn't give the results that we hoped for. In sport, as in science, being able to celebrate other people's successes while inwardly processing their devastation, then picking up the pieces and getting ready to go again is an important skill. Of course, all sports people reach a point where they decide to retire and focus on other endeavours, and us scientists do too. When you love what you do, deciding when to stop can be very hard, but that's a whole different story.
Thank you for listening. Join the Dementia Research bloggers and share your own views.